are listening to part 22 of our series, The 7 Medicines, The Wise Woman Way, with Susan Wade at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susan. Welcome back to Time Monk Radio.
Hi, Gemini. It's always a delight to be here with you. How's your week been?
It's been wonderful. Thank you. What about yours?
Oh, I so enjoy the cooling off of the weather, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, and the leaves seriously turning colors now. Pumpkins and harvest festivals, and of course the Saugerties Garlic Festival here. We're sitting right on top of one of the biggest garlic festivals in the world, and we do love our garlic here.
That sounds wonderful.
I'm sorry if people have been disappointed if they were hoping that I was going to give them menus or tell them specifically what to eat, instead of just telling them to eat, right? Because that is indeed what I am saying, is eat whole foods, eat foods that aren't processed, and you pretty much can't go wrong, so long as what you're buying are minimally or not processed foods. You know, you can certainly buy, we wouldn't count like frozen corn as processed. That's not processed, that's just frozen. Right? Even canned vegetables aren't really processed. By processed, what we mean is there's a list of ingredients. Something has been done to it. Something has been added to it. Something has been taken away from it. I say to people, you know, fruit juice really contains no nutrition at all. And they say, well, look what it says right here in the bottle. It says it has 100% of your daily vitamin C. And I said, would you read the ingredients? They say, oh, vitamin C added. And if there's any other nutrition in it, it's all been added to. So that's processed food. That's not what we want. What we want is real food, whole food, cooked food, yay. Raw food, not so good. All right, I'm sure that I have suggested that people go and watch the raw versus cooked debate. For a lot more information, you can find that on YouTube about that. But we're not here, I'm not here in the Fourth River to say you have to eat this or you have to eat that. The broadest diets are the healthiest diets. Every time we start taking any real food out of our diet, so if we say, I'm not going to eat meat, or I'm not going to eat dairy, or I'm not going to eat wheat, anytime we take a real food out of our diet, we have narrowed our diet and therefore narrowed our opportunity for health. There certainly are some specific health challenges in which we must forego certain foods, but those are few and far between. Americans tend to be a little neurotic about their food and run through a variety of different, let's call them hysterias. Right, so we want to eat a broad diet. We want to eat a diet of real foods. We want to avoid taking supplements, and we want to drink our nourishing herbal infusions. It really is that simple and easy. So when we first started talking about the Fourth River, about lifestyle medicine, about nourish and tonify, I suggested that nourishment is something that can happen at any one instance. If you drink even a sip of nourishing herbal infusion, you got it, your body got it, woo! You got it forever and ever, it's now yours. If you repeat it, all to the better, but tonification itself needs to be repeated. That tonification is, in fact, what happens when we repeat. And that tonification has to do with rhythms. We can hear a tonified heart beating, thump, 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 thump. We can hear an atonic heart, a heart that is not in good tone, beating thump, 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 thump. Might be good for a jazz drummer, but not so good for our heart. While we can't hear our nervous system doing that, we can feel it. And we were talking last week about the great braid, the nervous system, the hormonal system, and the immune system, and how much they need minerals, and how much they need tonification as well. In other words, they need regular, repeated challenges, and they need to have regular rhythms for their long-term functioning. I find it somewhat interesting that many people will keep their pets to a fairly strict schedule. My pet eats at this time and this time, and my pet goes for a walk at this time and this time, and yet they will let themselves walk or eat or sleep at any old time without any regard to giving themselves something that they can count on. This, in many respects, is the very essence of tonification. Giving ourselves something we can count on, something that happens over and over again. This creates a long-term rhythm within ourselves, within our bodies, that helps us to deal with the variety of stressors that life can bring to us. So tonification is about rhythm. Tonification is about repetition. Last month when we were talking about nourishing and tonifying, I said that if I went out and ran 10 miles in one day, it would not tonify me. That if I ran half a mile every 3 or 4 days, that within 5 weeks, 10 weeks, I would be very toned, and I would have done it half a mile twice a week. It would only take me 10 weeks to run that 10 miles, and instead of murdering myself by doing it all at once, by regularly repeating it, I would gain some tonification. What do you do for tonification? Does it have a regular rhythm to it? This regular rhythmical movement of tonics has led to some interesting kind of ideas about herbalism that don't really hold up. So one of the ideas that I've heard about herbalism is you can't take an herb every day because after a while your body builds up a tolerance to it or becomes immune to it. Have you heard that?
Yes, I have heard that.
Yeah, it's a pretty common myth. And it comes from using tonics. And it's not that we don't get a benefit from using an herb on a daily basis if we wish to use an herb on a daily basis, and even some tonics can be used on a daily basis. But that as with anything, we find that if we use a broken dose with a tonic, in other words, 2 days on and 2 days off, or a week on and a week off, a broken dose, that this builds more tonification. Certainly we see exactly the same thing if we're looking at tonifying our muscles. If we always do exactly the same exercises, then after a while the muscles are not gaining any more tone because they're just kind of, tapping their little toes and going, yes, yes, this is what we do. If we shake it up, move it around, do something different, we now have the broken dose. It's not that we become immune to it. No, we actually still get the good out of it. But tonification means we want more. We want to really change what's happening with tonification. So we also see that with tonification, there is the very real danger that if we do it on a daily basis, we could injure ourselves. I was listening with my sweetheart to the ball game, and one of the announcers said, yeah, the problem with these players nowadays is they're overtoned. They work out so much, they're overtoned, and then they get right out in the field and they get injured from overtoning. And I thought, isn't that interesting that this has kind of come into the kind of common mind, the idea that if we do too much, it is not so good for us. I was quite shocked to learn, and you may be too, that Olympic athletes are not healthy people. They are overtoned, as the announcer would have it, and in fact, it decreases the functioning of the immune system, and they're quite prone to colds and flus and a variety of things. And being an Olympic athlete does not mean that you live for a long time, because you have, in fact, through doing too much tonification on a daily basis, really done permanent injury to your body. So, tonifying is rhythmical and repetitious, and That rhythm and repetition can be once every morning or once every other day or once every third day or so on, just as there are many, many rhythms we can choose thus. Isla Burgess, a very interesting herbalist who lives in New Zealand, chooses a variety of different tonics that she wants to work with and works with one tonic for 6 weeks and then moves on to another one, so that over a course of 2 years, she has used a great variety of tonics, and she says then there are some that she wants to go back and start using again. So 6 weeks and then another one. This, again, is a broken dose, not because the plant no longer works, but simply because we want a little more, and that's what tonification is going to give us. The other thing that I have found that has kind of entered the mythos with herbal medicine is that tonics, as opposed to nourishers, can be somewhat dangerous. And certainly we are talking about the danger of, say, doing yoga every morning, which I personally think is quite a dangerous thing to do, or overdoing any particular kind of thing. And so I think this is a good place to bring this myth up, the idea that tonic herbs are dangerous. And one of the reasons for this is that, as I often say, the arc of herbal medicine runs from naked people rolling in the plants to white-coated lab technicians looking for active ingredients and actually synthesizing drugs from constituents found in plants. So as herbalists pushed more and more toward becoming pharmacists and druggists, the tonic plants that they used were stronger and stronger and stronger. This reached, I believe, its peak in the middle of the 20th century in America with Dr. Christopher. And Dr. Christopher and his school of natural healing played a profound and important part in preserving herbal medicine through the 50s and on into it. The School of Natural Medicine book that I have was first published in 1976 and then reprinted again and again and again. And a great thanks to Dr. Christopher for his wonderful work. He was a heroic healer. He was very much in the heroic tradition of poking, puking, and purging, the humoral theory, and so on. And so we turn to the School of Natural Healing, the big textbook that was used there and that is still used widely by many people, to the tonic herbs. And here we find some herbs that indeed are quite dangerous. Barberry, Berberis vulgaris, the first one, is certainly not a very dangerous plant, except this one thing. And you're going to laugh at me and say, well, that hardly counts, and it does hardly count. But researchers found that the barberry bush, Berberis, is the plant where deer ticks most like to congregate. And they found scores more deer ticks by Berberis plants, the barberry plants, than by any other plant. So certainly not directly dangerous to us, but go out there harvesting the bark, who knows, you might get bit by a deer tick and get Lyme disease, and that could definitely be dangerous to you. Berberis vulgaris contains berberine, a very important alkaloid, also found in another plant that he has listed here as a tonic, which is golden seal, Hydrastis canadensis, which also contains hydrostine. Hydrostine and berberine, very interesting and very important constituents in plants, imparting a yellow color to both golden seal and barberry. Oregon grapefruit, of course, also has the same berberine in it. And while these can be thought of as tonic plants, golden seal has been listed by the state of California as a carcinogenic plant and is not to be used without such a label being affixed to the product. And in fact, the berberis is not necessarily a pleasant compound for the body, and not what I would consider a tonic. It is certainly very strongly anti-infective, and these plants have been used in that way. They are astringent. And astringent herbs, because they cause a flex and release of the tissue, are considered to be tonic herbs. In other words, we think of them rather like exercise for the cells of the body. But we can use far safer astringents than barberry and golden seal. He also lists blessed thistle and European sanctuary. And these are also not particularly dangerous herbs. As a matter of fact, blessed thistle, holy thistle, milk thistle are all used in modern-day herbal practice as liver tonics. These thistles, with their bitterness, are thought to be some of the finest of the liver tonics. The whole family, the Asteraceae family, in general, is quite liver active. But again, my preference for a tonic, liver tonic herb would be dandelion. I would not necessarily think to use the thistles, which are far more bitter and therefore far more active and far less likely by my lights to be a true tonic herb. Now, certainly, nature does not draw hard black lines ever. So we as humans might want to say nourishing herbs over here and tonifying herbs over here and stimulating herbs over here. But nature doesn't do that. So we could actually have an herb like dandelion, which is nourishing and tonifying and maybe even a wee little bit stimulating. But I find the thistles and the centauries and the gentians, and Gentiana lutea is also listed here, to be very hammering, very strong, far stronger than I think we need to have a plant be when it is going to be used as a tonic. And the same for me would go for American Colombo Peruvian bark, which is cinchona, and white poplar bark as well. These are certainly barks that are used and have some astringent and some tonic properties, but once again, they are tremendously bitter. Cinchona is what we get quinine from. And if you have tonic water, there's a tiny bit of quinine in tonic water. You can see how very, very, very bitter it is. So once again, to me, these are not the kinds of herbs that I want to use on a regular basis as tonifying. Let me make an analogy here. We're going to talk later on this month about 3 of my favorite physical toners: yoga, tai chi, and qigong. And these are wonderful exercises that can be done on a daily basis. They are true tonics. And we have all heard of really severe things like outward bound, right, and say climbing the face of a mountain with, pitons and having to be strung up in harnesses and so on. And while those are fun things to do, rafting down rivers, right, one of my fun things to do, they're not the kinds of things that we want to do every day. We don't get up every day and run the rapids down the river. Even the guides don't do it on a daily basis. So these herbs are like that cliff face of those whitewater rapids. Surely they have their place, and how wonderful if we can encounter them and use them at the time that we want to be using them. But in general, this idea of tonifying herbs being somewhat dangerous is not completely unfounded because of the kinds of tonifying herbs that have been used in the past and that many heroic practitioners are, in fact, still using. In each one of my books, I have an introductory section called Using Herbs Safely. And I like to include this information because I want people to feel very safe about the herbs that they use. One of the best ways I found for people to feel safe and to be safe using herbs is to divide the herbs roughly into 4 categories. Nourishing herbs, the safest herbs. Side effects are minimal. They're usually brewed in water or vinegar, and they're taken in quantities for extended periods of time every single day is just fine. Some of my favorite nourishing herbs include chickweed, comfrey leaf, cornsilk, dandelion leaf, hawthorn, berries, kelp, linden flowers, mallow, mullein, nettle, oat straw, plantain, purslane, red clover, raspberry leaf, self-heal, and cyprian. Tonic herbs act slowly and have cumulative effects. They are best used consistently for months or years. Tonics are safe to take with drugs, just like nourishing herbs. They are generally prepared in water, vinegar, or alcohol to make a tincture. We might want to divide tonics up a little further so that we get a little closer look at how different tonics can be. The tonics that come the closest to nourishing herb are food tonics. And these would be things like turmeric, garlic, ginger, maitake mushrooms, pomegranate, seaweed, and other mushrooms. Soothing tonics would include things like astragalus, burdock root, calendula, cleavers, echinacea, eleutherococcus, fenugreek seed, goldenrod flowers, and passion flower. Astringent tonics are used both internally and externally. American ash, aspen, avens, barberry, bistort, black haw, coptis, cranesbill, couch grass, horsetail, oak bark, shepherd's purse, and witch hazel. And then the bitter tonics, which are the closest to the stimulating, sedating herbs: buchu, dandelion root, cronewort, fennel seed, ginseng, milk-thistle seed, motherwort, saw palmetto, black tea, green tea, vitex, wild yam, and yellow dock. These are a few of the many, many, many tonifying herbs that are available. As we see, we have wandered in to a big deal here when we start looking at tonic herbs, and I've broken them up by how they affect us. This is soothing. All right, this is closer to stimulating because it's bitter. But people also break them up so that they would have liver tonics or heart tonics or digestive tonics or brain tonics. I was just looking at a new magazine that just came in the house and said, brain tonics. I thought, aha, I wonder what they're using as a brain tonic. Are they using, let's guess, are they using ginkgo? Are they using ginseng? These are the kinds of plants that are often thought of as tonifying to the brain. So what can we say about tonifying plants? They, on one hand, can be a big deal. And if there's some part of your body that you feel really needs some extra assistance, choosing a especially food-like tonifying plant can give you something to do rather than to worry about that part of your body. So if you say, oh my goodness, I'm so concerned about my liver, instead of just, stressing about your liver, or worse yet, doing a liver detox, which is exactly the wrong way to go, you can say, what herbs are tonic to the liver? Oh, dandelion is tonic to the liver, and burdock is tonic to the liver. And burdock is soothing, and I need some soothing, so I'm going to use some burdock root infusion. Or burdock is too soothing, I'm kind of, let it go, I need some more energy. I'm going to use dandelion root as my liver tonic to get some more get up and go here. There are certainly all kinds of books written about tonic herbs and using tonic herbs. And one of the, to me, most fun way to get the tonifying qualities of herbs into my body and into my life and into my diet is to eat wild plants in my salads and to eat mint family plants in my salads. The mint family plants are wonderful tonics, and they are, of course, special tonics for the digestive system, but also for the respiratory system, and also great general tonics. Many people would feel just fine about drinking a cup of mint tea on a fairly regular basis, not every day, but as needed after meals or every other day, or whatever pattern you choose. Again, thinking back to Isla and the idea that, I don't need to do the same tonic every single day. Like with exercise, it's a good idea to exercise every day, but not necessarily the very same thing. We want to switch it up. We want to change it around so that we have a variety of different nourishing herbs that move into our bodies. Now, one of the things that's quite critical is for us to understand this gradation between nourishing, tonifying, and stimulating. I said that nourishment is yours forever, any one instance of it and you have it, and that tonification needs to be repeated. Stimulus might seem like tonification. It doesn't seem much like nourishment because we know that stimulus and sedation go away. What we're actually looking at is that if we are tonified, that we've improved the functioning of the organ or the organism. And if we stimulate, then we increase the functioning of the organ or the organism. This can make it very difficult for us to discern, especially at first, whether or not we're using a tonifying herb or a stimulating herb, because the results, in fact, seem to be extremely similar. One of the ways that we can tell after a while, however, is that if we've been using something that is stimulating and we then take it away, then we actually crash. Suppose we've been using coffee as a stimulant. It can be a tonic. Certainly for the brain, it's a tonic. But we can also use it as a stimulant. And when we use it as a stimulant and then don't get it, then kaboom, we crash. Whereas if we're drinking nettle to get energy in the morning and we can't have our nettle, we can get a little grumpy, but we're not going to crash because we have been getting nourishment and we have been getting the tonifying qualities of the nettle. This is also one of the reasons why I rotate through 5 nourishing herbal infusions rather than picking one and hammering myself with it over and over and over again. And we remember that last week when I was talking about ideal diets, that the ideal diet is the broadest diet. Just so, in working with the tonics, we find that the ideal is to work with more, not with less. As for myself, I take hawthorn berry tincture on a daily basis as a tonic for my heart. And other than that, I move it around, switch it around, keep it moving. I'm going to be coming back next week and talking to you about 3 of my favorite ways to tonify. And I think once again, we have somehow used up all of our time.
I think we have, Susan. I'll look forward to next week.
Green blessings. Thank you, Gemini.
Thank you. And this concludes part 22 of our series, The 7 Medicines, The Wise Woman Way with Susan Wade at Time Monk Radio.